Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for today's webinar on the PRINCE2 practices. So we are going to be diving into the heart of what makes projects tick today. So if you've ever wondered, why does this project feel like an absolute runaway train? PRINCE2 has the practices to put you back on track. Okay, so let's start off with the basics. What are the PRINCE2 practices? So according to PeopleCert, the awarding body for PRINCE2, a PRINCE2 practice is an aspect of project management that must be applied consistently and throughout the project lifecycle. So the practices require specific treatment of that aspect of project management for the PRINCE2 processes to be effective. So in simple terms, PRINCE2 practices are essential aspects of project management that have to be applied consistently throughout a project. So these practices are going to guide you through the project's life cycle. It's like sat-nav for your project, just helps you navigate through all of those really complex tasks and dead ends, because those are bound to happen. So PRINCE2 and the PRINCE2 practices are almost like the ultimate project handbook, like an IKEA instruction manual, but just with fewer random screws left over at the end, I suppose. Now, PRINCE2 is built around 7 key practices. So the practices are the foundation for managing projects effectively, and they are firstly the business case practice, organizing, plans, quality, risk, issues, and lastly, we have progress. Okay, so let's start with the business case practice. Every project starts with an idea that's considered to have some kind of potential value for the organization that's concerned, right? So the business case practice addresses how that idea is developed into a viable investment proposition and how success is then defined and how it's verified. So the business case practice is like the basis for how project management is going to maintain its focus throughout the project on the project's benefits and the project's purpose and the alignment with the objectives and priorities of the business and any other organizations involved. So if you've ever been working on a project or been a part of a project and you're sitting there going, why are we doing this? That is essentially what the business case is for. So it's the practice that makes sure the project has a justifiable reason for existing in the first place. It's almost there to make sure that you don't end up with projects that sound like, yeah, we're going to build a bridge to nowhere. So the business case evolves throughout the project. So it's checking to see if the project still makes sense. You can think of it like your project's sanity check. Like when you walk into a room and you forget what you're doing there, the business case is supposed to be there to remind you in the sense of project management. Now, the business case is designed to answer the question, why? So if you watched our previous webinar on the PRINCE2 principles, you'll actually see that this practice aligns really closely with the ensure continued business justification principle. Now, next we have the organizing practice. Project work needs to be directed by those who are accountable, delegated to those responsible for managing it, and allocated to those who will deliver the products required for the project. So projects are cross-functional, so your typical line management structures are probably not going to be suitable. Now, the organizing practice describes the roles, responsibilities, and relationships. Does that sound familiar? In the temporary project management team, okay? And those roles, responsibilities, and relationships are those that are needed to kind of initiate the project and to complete the project effectively. So it's going to describe the organizing practice is going to describe how the business, the user, and the supplier interests are being represented in project activities and in decision making. So the organizing practice is going to essentially answer the question, who? Now, PRINCE2 loves structure, and the organizing practice is all about making sure that everybody knows their role, and that avoids that dreaded, wait, I thought you were doing that moment, okay? It's almost like casting the right people into the right roles. Now, our third practice is the plans practice. PRINCE2 projects are delivered in stages based on a series of approved plans. This much we know. So this practice is going to describe how plans are designed and how they are developed. Okay. Now in PRINCE2, the plans are matched to the needs of the people through the different management layers, which are directing, managing, and delivering. And they are the focus for communication and control throughout the entire project. So the plans practice is like your project's roadmap. You wouldn't start a road trip without knowing how to get there. Okay, so in the same way, in PRINCE2, the plans practice is going to outline how you're going to get from point A to point B with the least number of detours. So it answers the questions, how much, when, okay? But just remember, when it comes to the plans practice, a plan is a guide. It's not some kind of prophecy. PRINCE2 knows that things can change, and that's where the other practices are going to come in. Next, we have the quality practice. So the initial project idea is only going to be understood as a very kind of broad outline. The quality practice is going to explain how that outline is developed so that all of our stakeholders understand the quality attributes of the products that need to be delivered, and then how project management will ensure that these requirements are subsequently delivered, okay? It's not enough to just deliver. What you deliver needs to work. It needs to be fit for purpose. So this practice is there to ensure that your project delivers products that meet expectations, whether it's a new app, whether it's a marketing campaign. If the quality isn't there, you're definitely going to have some explaining to do. So in PRINCE2, we define what good looks like from the start. That way you're not going to be surprised when the client says, this is not what I asked for. So this practice aligns really well with the focus on products principle that we covered in a previous webinar, and it answers the question, what? What are we delivering? What does it look like? What does a good X, Y, and Z look like? Okay. Next up, we have the risk practice. Okay, so because of the very unique nature of projects, which use kind of new and different products and suppliers or procedures, there's a lot more uncertainty, which naturally would result in some more risk. So the risk practice addresses how the project team manages that uncertainty. It answers the question, what if? So PRINCE2 knows that projects can go wrong. So rather than just kind of hoping for the best, it helps you prepare for the worst. It's like an insurance policy for your project. You identify those potential risks, and then you figure out what to do if they do actually end up happening. It's like packing an umbrella just because the weather report said, hey, we could have a 10% chance of rain. You're prepared for that 10%, just in case. Okay, next we have the issues practice. So when things do go wrong, because let's face it, they often do, PRINCE2 has the issues practice. So this practice is going to describe how we assess and respond to issues that have a potential impact on any aspect of the project. And that is including its kind of objectives, its plans, its products. Issues may be unanticipated general problems. They could be requests for change, or they could be an instance of a product not meeting its specification. So the issues practice is going to help you deal with problems that weren't anticipated. Those plot twists that happen in projects, like your key developer has decided that they're going to be moving to a beach in Bali, okay? This practice is all about staying calm, sorting out the problem, and then moving on. Okay, so this practice answers the question, well, what now? And then finally, we have progress. This practice addresses the ongoing achievability of the plans we've laid out. So it explains the monitoring of performance and the escalation process if events are not going according to plan, through a mixture of event and time-based controls. Ultimately, this practice determines whether and how the project should proceed. This practice is almost like the dashboard on your car. It helps you to monitor how your project is going, if you're on track, and what adjustments you might need. So if the needle starts edging into the red, you know it's time to step in before things go full meltdown. Okay, so this practice answers the questions, where are we now? Where are we going? Should we continue? Okay, and on that note, progress means regularly asking, should we continue? Because sometimes the best decision is to stop, and not only because it's 5 p.m. on a Friday. Okay. Now, we know the practices. Let's talk about applying them. PRINCE2 is not a one size fits all approach, okay? The way that you apply the practices is going to depend on your project's context, whether you're working on a very complex multi-year endeavor or a very short and simple project. It's really important to consider the context of your project. Things like importance and risk and urgency of the project are all going to determine what level of control we need for this project in particular. The level of control is then going to tell us what degree of formality and frequency we should use when we are monitoring and reviewing and reporting and making decisions during the project. So PRINCE2 allows flexibility in kind of how you go about documenting procedures and techniques and standards. Maybe you need a very, very detailed instruction manual, or maybe you just need a quick reference guide. PRINCE2 lets you adapt. You can have either one of those or something that fits in the middle, depending on your project's needs. So, for example, if you are working in more of a customer supplier environment, the level of control might be a bit strict. Maybe you require some more formal documentation. Whereas on the other hand, if you're working on a kind of small internal project, you'd probably need much lighter controls. So PRINCE2 makes sure that you're always using just the right amount of structure for the job. Now in PRINCE2, we also have management products, which is just a fancy way of saying documents. So why do we call them management products? Because these are the things that we are going to use to guide how we manage the project that we are working on. There are two key management products that align really well with each of the practices that we chatted about today that'll help you and your project stay on track. So firstly, we have the project initiation documentation, or the PID, and that comprises the package of information that's developed and compiled during initiation to gain authorization to proceed with the project. Now, the goal here is to make sure that we have a good reason to carry out the project before we ask the project board to invest their time and their money and their resources into it. It also provides the basis for the project's ongoing management. So what does that mean? The PID contains a wide range, massive variety of information that can be captured in kind of separate documents or systems. Or otherwise, all the information could be gathered to form just a single reference document, which really helps when new people are joining that temporary organization we formed for this project. So they have a very central place to see what the project is all about and how we're going about managing it. The PID is what we call a living product, because it should be updated regularly to reflect the current status, plans, and the controls of the project. It's like it could be compared to a contract, okay, for your project, because it outlines everything from the project's objectives to how PRINCE2 is being tailored for your specific project. So it's like a go-to reference throughout the project. Next, we have the project log. The purpose of the project log is to capture the continually changing or ever-evolving records of issues, lessons, products, quality, risk, and other formal or informal actions or events. So the project log is dynamic in that it contains the current and the historic record of project activities in progress. So it keeps track of all activities and risks and decisions. It can be a single document, but more often than not, the project log is a collection of separate, smaller logs usually. So it's almost like a diary that documents all of the highs and the very, very lows of the journey. And you can go back and, shrink into a ball of embarrassment about the things that have gone very, very wrong by using your project log. Okay. And there you have it. So those are the 7 PRINCE2 practices. They are designed to give you structure and flexibility at the same time. Each practice works together to help you keep your projects on track and handle surprises and make sure that at the end of the day, you've delivered something that is actually useful. So if you enjoyed today's webinar, you can drop a like by clicking the button below. We'd also love to hear your thoughts on the PRINCE2 practices or any interesting observations you have to share. So if you'd like to see more content like this, please feel free to subscribe to our channel so you can be notified when we post more webinars like this. The next webinar in our series takes a deeper dive into the business case practice, and we hope to see you there.